Music Bed.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to TIQ-TV episode 6. Glad to have you all back. I am delighted to say that we've got a stand-up member of our education community, Mr. Sean Sibley. Sean, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, Simon. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. I think it was pertinent, and the timing that we've got at the moment, it was pertinent to get someone of your experience on the show. We're both parents. We're going through a bit of a transient time and have done over the past 12 months, and we've just been discussing before we came on live some further changes that are happening, and I think it's important that we address that and we have a conversation about it, which I'm really looking forward to. But give us a quick introduction into who you are and a bit of history about your education background.
Yeah, well, I've been teaching for 29 years. All of my professional life has been in the UK, where I was a head teacher for 10 years in Shropshire, very different to Qatar. Came here in 2016, absolutely love it, fell in love with the school in particular. The school is a hub of the community. Anybody who works here catches the bug and they become very passionate about the school. Got 2 children of my own, so my son's trained to be a teacher and he qualifies this year. I tried to put him off, but obviously did no good. And then my daughter is trained to be a doctor in Manchester. So it's just my wife and I here in Qatar now. Very good,
very good. And like we said, you are, now what's your official title? Because there's head teachers, there's principals. So let me not get it wrong from the start.
I've been called lots of things. I'm the school principal. I'm the school principal because we're going into years 7 and 8, Simon, now. It's kind of, you've almost got a different key stage, a different part of the school. So I oversee the school, and then I've got a head of school as well. Right. But obviously I've got a board of governors who sit over me as well.
Mm-hmm. And am I right in thinking that the school it's a huge part of the British Embassy? It's backed by the British Embassy. They give you a huge amount of support, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, the school is sponsored by the British Embassy. It was set up in 1979 by the Queen Elizabeth II, and the Emir's father. And the Emir actually attended here as a child, actually. So, yeah, the Embassy is very involved in what we do, very supportive. We're a non-for-profit school as well, which for me is really important, because that means all the money, it gets reinvested in the children. You know, we're not here to make lots of money and make a profit. And I think that helps steer the correct direction of the school.
Yeah, absolutely. We can't avoid it. We can't avoid talking about it. And we touched on it yesterday and today as we were preparing. You've got a huge a challenge ahead at this time, and have done for the past 12 months with COVID, with certain percentages of children being allowed in, and that obviously fluctuating. Tell us a bit about your own personal experience. What challenges have you found personally as a principal to appease and to encourage what's going on in the school at the moment, and talk us through some of the difficulties that the school is facing right now?
I don't think anything prepares you for this. I think anybody who runs an organisation, it's a bit like steering a ship through a storm, and every day something different falls on your lap. I mean, I think, you know, anybody in leadership, part of it is trying to be flexible and trying to deal with the unexpected. I mean, you know, I'm not going to lie, it's been an incredibly tough year. I mean, what helps me is I've got a fantastic staff here at DES. You know, I mean, the teachers, teaching assistants, and non-academic staff work incredibly hard. So that makes everything a lot easier. I think the school's been incredibly organised right from the outset as well. So setting out a clear roadmap, and also we've been probably over cautious. We've been incredibly careful, which has meant actually it hasn't disrupted us as much as it may have disrupted other organisations and other schools. You know, so we've followed all the protocols very, very sensibly. So for some people, you know, they haven't been happy about that, but you know, I think it's meant that we've stayed open, and it's had minor disruption. But yeah, it's been incredibly tough. You know, you start to question yourself. You know, I think the staff, and you may allude to this later on, but, you know, the staff have been through an incredibly tough year. I mean, you know, I haven't seen my mother for a year and a half, and she's not very well at the moment. You know, I haven't seen my son for over a year. So personally, for me, it's been incredibly tough. You know, we want to go back to the UK to see our families, but, you know, staff can't get back. I also think it's been incredibly tough for parents. You know, as you said, I'm a father myself, but I think my children are older. But for those working parents in particular, you know, having the children at school on alternative days, I know has been demanding. You know, having to help them with their work at home and having to deal with, you know, perhaps, dare I say, mental health issues and lack of socialization. All of this impacts on our children and on ourselves. You know, I think it's you know, we probably all of us questioned ourselves, and it's been a testing time on our own character and how we manage life in general. So yeah, it's been demanding.
And we'll come on to it in a bit, but the parent aspect, that, you know, the parents and of course the teachers and the volunteers are the lifeblood of the school, and obviously a lot of the events and the sort of fundraising events at different times of year, they haven't been able to happen, which we'll touch on in a bit. I'm sure it is. Of course, it's demanding. As I say, both my children are at DES. Hopefully, my wife's going to be joining the faculty in the not too distant future. There are constant changes that are coming and different percentages. And you as an organisation, as a school, are having to pivot, you know, all the time, depending on what the Ministry of Education. Well, I assume it's the Ministry of Education that enforce those rule changes.
Well, yeah, it's the MOE and also the Ministry of Public Health. So both of those ministries, and you know, there are announcements coming out all the time. I mean, I don't envy the job of those ministries. You know, those ministries are having to manage the country to get through this safely. So it's certainly not easy for them. But yeah, things are changing every week, sometimes every day. And I think schools have to react very quickly to these changes of decisions. And sometimes there are grey areas because this is new for everybody. Yeah. You know, but I think, you know, everybody's working hard.
Yeah. We've had several conversations on a personal level with regards to the parent factor, with what's happening with COVID. You touched on it earlier, and I do think it's very important to emphasize that the school has to keep going and the teachers have to keep going. And therefore, unfortunately, fees are a big part of your survival. It's a bit of an awkward one, but I'm just going to give you a chance to say something along the lines of what the teachers are doing behind the scenes that the parents may not understand, and the challenges that they're facing by not physically being in school or having to mix the two, because nothing has stopped, has it?
No, there hasn't. And look, I can completely get where you're coming from. I think from the outside, it looks like, well, aren't the teachers working less? But actually, ironically, they're working harder. What we run is what is called the hybrid model. So in other words, you know, the children are in one day, not in another day. The way teachers are teaching now is completely alien to whatever they've done before. So the children are set out with the spaces between them. They can't move around the classroom. They can't work in small groups or talk to a partner. They have to face the front. We limited in the resources that we can use, so they can't share those either. Teachers, remember, have to wear the masks all day long and talking all day long and keeping a distance from the children. So that's not how you're taught to teach. You know, a big part of teaching these days, which is very different to when I was a child, is teachers, you know, getting children working in groups, you know, discussing ideas, questioning. That's how children learn. So for teachers in particular, it's been incredibly stressful. Not only are they teaching the children, they're getting through work, believe it or not, at a faster rate as well, because there's less children in the class. You can't go above 15. But they're also having to prepare home tasks for the children at home. They're also having to deal with a lot of messages, rightfully so, from parents who are questioning things and asking about the home tasks. So teachers are working all day long at school, going home, still dealing with the planning and preparation, assessment, which is all the tasks they normally do, but also responding to parent questions and concerns, and also preparing work for children at home. We've got staff who are Zooming children at home, particularly those who have additional learning needs. So it's managing a lot of things for those teachers. And I think what people forget is that teachers every day are going into a classroom where potentially they might get COVID. It's been learned, hasn't it, that children tend to be carriers of COVID rather than actually having COVID themselves generally. So, teachers are taking a risk. They're frontline workers. They're stepping in front of children because that's what they're passionate about. But there is always that slight danger, and many of my staff have had to go into quarantine because, a child's been in touch with a positive case outside school. Generally, schools are managing this whole situation really well. And there's very, very few cases coming out of schools. It's the contact outside school. So, yeah, I think all of that adds up to, a stressful situation, but a situation we've got to get through. We're all here because we care enormously about children. So that's why staff here will put their neck on the line and want to go that extra mile, because that's what we're trained to do.
Yeah, you mentioned that there about the repercussions that occur because of outside contact. Just give us an example. You mentioned it before, but again, we came on that another class have had to be sent home. What happens, for those that don't know, if someone reports that they've come in contact or there is a positive case, and just kind of emphasize how much of an impact that has on the class?
Well, I mean, we don't take any chances. So we have protocols now for every situation. So we have what we call a CMG here at school, which is a COVID management group, which involves senior leaders, school nurse, health and safety. And as soon as we hear, if a child has been in touch with a positive case outside school and we hear about it, that child has to be sent home immediately. So do the rest of that class until a negative test result has been given for that particular child. Also the teacher and any teaching assistants as well. And then obviously you've got a quarantine period following that as well. We've had testing actually go on by the Ministry of Public Health here at school as well. So weekends, I would say, about 4 weekends on a trot, we've all been in with the Ministry of Public Health, testing children and staff to make sure that they're safe. We do it here because it's a focal point, and it's easier for the parents and children to get here rather than the ministry go around all the homes. So it's safer as well. But, we're following quarantine. And then obviously, if a teacher goes into quarantine, then, we have to get cover teachers for the classes as well. So there's been a lot of cover having to be provided, or people within the school are helping to cover. Another thing that's obviously happened recently are the vaccines, which is a fantastic thing for education staff. I'm so pleased that education staff in general have been prioritised for these. All of my staff have had their first vaccines. The majority have had their second vaccines, me included. By the time we come back after the spring break, everybody will have had their second vaccine, bar 2 who are exempted. So this is a good thing, but obviously getting those vaccines has meant managing that difficult. That some of them have had to go during the school day. They haven't had a choice when they've had the vaccine. So we've had to move things around, timetables, making sure classes are covered correctly. So teaching can go on. We haven't closed the school, as you know, at any time. There are other schools who've done that, but we feel the priority at the moment, particularly because they're not having 100% education, we do not want to close the school. We'll do everything possible to make sure that education is still provided.
As you say, it's quite disruptive as it is for the children's education, what with, and I'm not necessarily saying that people are being selfish, they're maybe being a little bit unaware of their actions, and that knock-on effect with teachers having to go home and isolate and wait until the test result comes back from the individual pupil or family affected. You're then having to bring in understudies and interim teachers who don't know the children or may not know the children. And the children are, I think, we all know children are resilient. But it must be very confusing for the children as well. How have you found that the children have coped from what you've seen? I see you every morning that I arrive at school, and you're obviously very a hands-on and observational principal. How do you think the kids have coped with the last year?
Well, as you said, Simon, I think children are a lot more resilient than we think. You know, I think the children love being in school, absolutely love it. And you could see, you saw a difference, a big difference happened when the ministry said we were allowed to take the children outside for an outdoor break. PE. They love it. You know, the children, we've got, as you know, we've got a huge grass school field here, and we've divided it up so we're still retaining those bubbles. And we've got new covered courts as well. So we can spread children out a lot. But, you know, children, I think, have found the most difficult thing that children have found is the fact that they're only mixing with half of their class. So what we've done, what we did put in place last year was to do something called looping. So in other words, you keep the same teacher for the next year. So from years 1 to 2, you keep the same teacher, FS1 to FS2, 5 to 6, and things like that, 3 to 4. That helped because the children knew their teacher, but it meant that suddenly they only were mixing with half of their class. Now, as a child, you may have a really good friend in the other half of the class. And so that I imagine that must be difficult for the children. You can't sense it. You know, I mean, the children, when you go around and talk to the children, they say they're enjoying it. They say they prefer normal teaching and normal learning when everybody's in and they can move around and then have PE in the halls, for example, because that's another issue that's come up now. But generally, the children have coped incredibly well. I mean, attainment-wise and academically, they are doing well because they've got half a class in at a time. They've got more one-to-one help with the teacher. But you know, if I'm completely honest, I think, you know, my worries are the socialization for the children. You know, you know, children learn just as much from playing with children as they do in the classroom. You know, about sharing and about empathy and resilience, as you mentioned before. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, my worry is that some of those skills aren't being learned, which is a worry.
Yeah, imagination. Yeah. You know, they've got to be able to embrace themselves. You know, and outdoors is a huge key factor. Oscar, as you know, is my son, and he loves to put on a show. He's always controlling the other children. I have no idea where he gets that from. On the other side, and he loves being outdoors. And it's difficult as well. And I can only speculate from our experiences as parents that this stop-start, you know, Katie, our youngest, it doesn't bother her, whereas Oscar's a lot more sensitive, and each day he's being told he wants to go into school, it's a bit of a chore. He's absolutely loving it when he's there, and we believe he's getting on very, very well, but it's that first sort of 5 to 10 minutes of a realization that it's not the weekend, it's not a home learning day, and they're actually embracing the home learning days more than Georgie and I thought that they would. So there are some positive cases in which the kids are loving being at home, not for the negatives of being in school, but it does take a bit of time. It does take time for them to get used to it. And then, of course, lo and behold, something changes and you can't do this, or you can't go in tomorrow. Or my next point is the logistics. Logistics not only for management, for teachers, for TAs, and a lot of the TAs have got children within the school and other schools. And of course, siblings. How difficult have you found managing the logistics? Because you're never going to keep all parents happy.
Very difficult. I mean, I think that happens in non-COVID times, Simon, anyway. You're never going to keep everybody happy. I mean, I think one of the things we have done as a school is try to keep things as normal as we possibly can. So the timetable is still very, very similar to non-COVID times. You know, I still do, you know, myself and my head of school do assemblies every week, which the children can watch. We still have stars of the week. I'm still going into classes at a distance and reading stories to the children. You know, we're still going out on break duty. And, you know, the children, some of the children, I don't think are noticing it that much. But, you know, it is incredibly difficult because you've got staff, as I mentioned right at the beginning, who are worried and scared. And then I think it's times like this you remain flexible as a manager, and you hopefully care for your staff. And if they need to go a bit early or they need to work from home at that certain point, you adjust things to help those staff. I mean, obviously you balance it. There are sometimes I have to say no, and there are sometimes I allow that, because I think, you know, yes, the primary reason we're here is to teach children, but that means you've got to look after your staff well, treat them well, because then you will reap the benefits when they're with the children. You know, so we reward staff, you know, little things with staff as well. Hope, you know, we bought samosas for them today, and you know, it's things like that, little things where you make sure you're praising staff regularly as well. If I was to say every single staff member is really, really happy, I'd be lying, because, you know, they've been going through the most stressful time of their lives for a lot of them as well, being away from their families. You know, we've had teachers who unfortunately have had parents who've passed away during the COVID time and haven't been able to get back. Not for me, not saying they can't get back, but because of the restrictions in travel. And, you know, so managing things like that. And we've got a lot of young staff, single young staff, who really, you know, need the time with their families back in the UK, and that hasn't been able to happen. So that has been tough to manage. Yeah,
everyone is in the same position. Everyone wants, you know, I mean, teachers are regular travelers, you know, within that Easter holidays or certainly the summer holidays. It must be an impossible situation for the teachers. There are worse places to be in the world. You know, this is why
exactly. That's what I keep saying to my wife. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. You know, the weather's getting warmer. We're now having to try and convince Oscar to not wear school trousers. So maybe you can have a little word in his ear.
I'll do my best.
It's going to get too warm very quickly. I mean, we're already in the 40 degrees bracket now, and it's going to increase very, very quickly, as you are aware. We mentioned earlier about how community focused at Doha English Speaking School is. The community that we're both part of love the winter fair, for example. I've attended, I think, probably 7 of them, even before the children were born. And it's such a highlight of the year. And it's, of course, extremely disappointing that it wasn't able to occur last year, amongst many other of the fundraising aspects and things that you usually do. How have you coped with that? What is it that DES are trying to do differently? And what do you want to speak to the community about? How can we as a community help DES flourish in a time where these standard events that we all love can't take place?
Yeah, you're right, Simon. I mean, the winter fair is something that everybody in Qatar knows about. And I think people often say about DES, it's a home from home. You know, it really is, because we haven't got our extended family here. Really, without sounding too corny, that DES family replicates that. And I think it's a highlight of my year, you know, the winter fair. It is fantastic. And it is a shame, you know, again, I'd be lying if it hadn't affected us in some way that we can't have those big fundraising events. You know, we had I don't know if you ever came to the movie night we held on our school field, and we've had lots of lovely events there. You know, we've still got our Friends of DES, our PTA, obviously those raising money. We've had a few things, dressing up days and things like that. So the children know these things are still going on. I think what I want from the community is still to be supportive of the school, supportive of what we're trying to do. You know, we've got plenty of people who still sometimes sending nice, you know, words of encouragement to the teachers and the members of staff. You know, I think just saying nice things like that, it's a bit like going to a restaurant. You only tend to say something when you want to complain, but you know, the staff deserve to have people saying nice things to them as well. And there are parents who do that, and that means a lot to the staff. And I think, you know, I'm very appreciative of all the lovely things that parents have said about the school. So that's the way they can support them. I think in building, you know, staying as a community. I mean, I'm not going to tell people what to do at home as well as in school, but you know, I think it'd be really nice for parents to still get together at a social distance outside school to make sure the children can spend time with each other outside school, still maintaining, particularly within their bubble of the half class. You know, then that's safer than just mixing with anybody else. But you know, there are safe ways, aren't there, to get together as communities. A bit more difficult after the announcement last night of restriction of numbers and parties and no use of the pool and things like that. But I think as a parent, you know, it's part of being a parent, isn't it? That you want your child to be mixing with other children, to be playing with other children, and because they learn from each other. So I think for the benefit of the children, having those, still trying to find those safe opportunities, it will be an important role for parents. There is very little parents can do actually within the school, because we can't have volunteers in as we usually do. You know, we can't have those main events going on. But, you know, the Friends of Death is still there. It still wants people's ideas for fundraising and, you know, and things we want, what do parents want us to spend the funds on as well. So I think the Friends of Death are working closely with us on that.
Fantastic. The blended learning that you were talking about, I was just thinking about this as we were discussing. I think the positive that you can take from it is the technology that's available. You've got the apps, the dojo, you've obviously got Zoom or Teams, whatever people want to use. And I think we could possibly find some positives in the unfortunate situation that you are in as educators, that had these items not been available and this pandemic was in the mid-90s, when at the start of your teaching career, then this would have been literally close the school and home teaching and sending physical pieces of homework and jotters, as we used to call them, you know, home. The adaptation of the teachers to Zoom and to Dojo, that must have been quite a challenge as well.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm really proud of the way the staff have come on board with all that. I mean, what we did, I don't know if you remember last year, I think it was back in March, wasn't it, before we went completely online, we'd actually predicted it was going to happen. So what we'd done already with the staff is train them all up. And got Class Dojo running. We use Seesaw as an online platform. Early years, we've got a different platform as well. So staff were already aware of those platforms and already using them. So it wasn't brand new. And if you remember, I remember it was on a Wednesday, the school closed. We went straight onto online on Thursday. And not all schools managed to do that. And we did that because we were well drilled. You know, we knew exactly what we were doing. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think we've learnt a lot in the past year. I have in particular about IT. And I think it's probably in some ways, you know, it's been a good thing because we've learnt. I don't think we'll ever do things the same again. You know, I think it doesn't mean we're going to replicate this forever, but I think we've, for example, Zoom, you mentioned Zoom. I mean, what a great tool that is, you know, in the future. It will never, ever replicate face-to-face teaching. But I think what it's done is, particularly on the international scene, is joined people up and made, you know, the world a smaller place. I mean, certainly in my job, when I have meetings with board members and subcommittees, it's been fantastic. You know, I don't think we'll ever go, I wouldn't say never go back to face-to-face meetings, but when we're all so busy and we have busy schedules and diaries, having meetings like this is a great thing. I think the children have learned a lot, and I think that the danger is we've had to balance screen time with face-to-face. You never want to overburden children with screen time. And I'm always very mindful, perhaps being a bit of a dinosaur, that, you know, we shouldn't be staring at the screen all day long, because I think, you know, nothing replicates the teacher standing there in front of the children talking. But it's unavoidable for them to be accessing work through a screen at home. But, you know, I think as long as you can balance it, as long as you make children aware of internet safety, and we do that through lots of initiatives, as you know, in school, then, you know, it can be a safe forum for the children to learn through. So, yeah, you know, I'm a positive person. I'm not optimistic person. You've got to be in life. And I think, you know, let's take the nuggets from this that we've learned. So actually the future is better as well. Yeah.
It's expedited technology even faster than it was already going. But I think the key word that you've addressed there is balance. Zoom fatigue or video call fatigue sets in with adults, never mind children. And that's important that that balance is there. So no, I appreciate you addressing that. And in the internet safety, again, it's important for parents to understand that you're putting those relevant safety protocols in place. It's a hard question to finish off with, but what does the rest of the year look like for you? And what do you anticipate? I know it's a bit of a guesstimate, but based on what you've seen and with the way that Qatar has handled it. In fact, let me just throw in a caveat question there. How do you think Qatar as a whole have handled the COVID situation? And then tell me what you think the rest of the school year and the summer itself holds.
Well, without being political, I think Qatar dealt with it incredibly well. You know, I think in regards to schools and staffing, and, you know, I think it's been organised. I mean, the drive-through, vaccination. I mean, absolutely amazing. You know, I took my wife for a second vaccine the other day, and we were gone through there in 1 hour. So I think, you know, they've dealt with it very well. I think, you know, their arms have been twisted to make sure that they deal with things quite stringently and in a strict manner, which I believe personally it has needed to be done. Not all countries have dealt with it in the same way. I mean, you know, obviously I've got a lot of family back in the UK, and I don't think they reacted as quickly as Qatar did. And I think if they had done, they perhaps wouldn't be having some of the problems they're having at the moment. So I think Qatar have dealt with it incredibly well. I mean, you know, hindsight's a great thing. You know, maybe some things could have been dealt with in a slightly different way, but we're all learning. I think the future, you know, I think I'd be a rich man if I could predict the future, but I think now all the education staff will have had their second vaccines. We're hoping that will, hopefully more children will be coming back to school. There's nothing, believe me, that all of us at school want more than all the children back in. You know, I think the numbers are going up, aren't they? I think they're over 550. So we've got the new strains, the South African strain, the UK strain as well. So I think people are still being cautious. But you know, I feel that you know, with the additional cleaning, etc., you know, I'm hoping that schools will be back to normal probably in September. I personally can't see it happening before the summer break. I don't think they even take that risk. Rumours are going around, and rumours are a dangerous thing, that there'll be lockdown and things like this. But I don't know whether that'll happen. You know, I think if you listen to all the rumours, you just never rest. I mean, I think what we do is we've planned for every eventuality here at school. So we've got a number of scenarios, bringing back certain year group. You know, if they increase the percentage of children coming back, we've got scenarios set up ready to do that, prioritising certain year groups, particularly the really young children who I think, you know, find it tougher to learn remotely. But, you know, we've got all those in place. We're still done our normal recruitment, ready for a September, well, late August start. So everything is in place for every single eventuality. But yeah, I think with the testing, I mean, I don't know how much of the rest of the population will be vaccinated by the summer break. I think more. I think they're doing thousands, aren't they? Thousands and thousands per day. So yeah, let's hope that continues.
Yeah, I think they're aiming for around about between 8,000 and 10,000 per day. Yeah. Hopefully that will increase, and as you say, the number of second vaccinations are flying. Certainly with this drive-through. We haven't spoken about the World Cup, and I am going to finish off on that. And I know you don't have a crystal ball, but what do you envisage happening in November 2022 when it does come to education? Bearing in mind, when the previous Asian Games were here, the country went to an entire standstill. Have the Ministry of Education thought about this and communicated or asked for your thoughts as to what to do
I mean, I think they're envisaging, there's nothing kind of concrete come out yet, but they're envisaging that schools will be closed before the World Cup starts. Now that will mean, I think children will still be doing that 180 days per year, but what will happen is children will be coming back a lot earlier in August 2022. I think a date that's been bandied about has been, I think, about the 16th of August. That's when children will start back in 2022 to enable all the schools to finish end of November. So I think the authorities and the country want as many people behind the World Cup as possible. It's fantastic, isn't it, for the country? You know, I think it's a wonderful thing, and I think, you know, the children deserve to be at those matches and be able to go and see the football teams. So, I mean, I'm a big football fan, so I'm very excited about it. So, yeah, it'd be interesting.
We're not going to go there on World Cups, Sean. I'm a big football fan. I will go to the matches. Not sure who I'm going to be supporting. I'm not sure if I manage, but fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. But yes, it's going to be an amazing time. Hence, again, as we were discussing off air, the amount of roadworks that are going on. It's a means to an end. It will turn around very quickly. The stadiums are looking fantastic, and it's going to be an exciting and a very quick 18 months, and hopefully in 18 months that will lead to some more positive news. The children going back to school, and I cannot thank you enough for joining us on TIQ-TV. It's been our absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for your insight and education, no pun intended. Stay on the line. We'll finish the show there. Thanks very much for everyone who joined us on the podcast and on TIQ-TV, which will be on the YouTube channel. Sean Sibley has been my guest today. Thank you so much for your time, Sean.
Thank you, Simon. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And stay safe, everybody.